Okay, so the next project is making this little box room a bit bigger. So this is my son's little box room. As you can see, it's a tiny little room and it's got this funny original feature, this sort of curved wall that comes in and just steals a bit of the floor. So what I'm going to do is knock this wall down and then square this little tiny room off. Okay, so if you want to see how to build a corner stud wall like this, please watch the videos. So just starting to think about it. So this is in the landing, so this wall will stay and I'll extend this wall that way with studwork wall. I'm probably going to use acoustic plasterboard on the outside of it. And then this is the big bedroom. It's a bit of a mess, but I'm going to be knocking out where that cupboard is and squaring this room off into here to make this room smaller, but that room bigger. So I'll show you the build. So the first thing I'm going to do is rip up the floor in the loft over where that wall is to see what's going on in terms of the ceiling. I can see the wall, it would be just about here. It does not come up through the loft floor. It's not supporting the main roof. It's not sort of carrying on through here, but I want to expose it to see. Okay, so now the carpet's up. Here's my floorboards. I'm just marking where the wall is beneath. I'm going to use my multi-tool, wherever that is, down. Got a DeWalt multi-tool in here, and I'll use this to cut through. So just a multi-tool, and you'll be able to go through and cut off. They've got a little tongue and groove that lips these together, so I'll just cut that off, and then maybe cut some of these boards and just lift the ones that are over the top of the wall so I can just see what's going on. I think it'll stop at the ceiling and I won't see the wall coming through, but I just want to see where the joists, the ceiling joists, if they're actually sat, if it's a load bearing wall or what's going on. So I'm just going to rip this floor up. So I've just marked the boards because I'm going to be cutting them and they'll come out. They'll look very similar once I've pulled them out probably, so I've just numbered them so I know which sequence they go back in. And just another thing, in terms of PPE, I am going to, anything up in the loft, when you're lifting up floorboards and stuff, the dust is horrible old insulation, so just wear a decent mask. So I'm just using a multi-tool just to chop the top lip that's holding in the tongue and groove off one board, so I can then prise this one up and then I'll be able to take them all out. Obviously, watch out for electric cables. Do a test for electric cables first, and or don't cut deep enough to hit anything. First board out. So here we go. Lifted the floorboards, rolled back the really rubbish insulation, and then underneath this layer of dust and terrible old insulation is just the ceiling. So there's obviously, the wall obviously stops at the ceiling. I mean, it might be supporting these joists to some extent, but these joists will extend over and be supported at the end of the wall. So I'm fairly hopeful I can take this wall out, and then I'll obviously be putting a new wall back on a slightly different, rather than going that way across 45 degrees and back, my new wall will go across and straight here. So these joists will still have a decent studwork wall holding them up. And whilst I'm building it, I won't come up here and put lots of weight on top of it or anything. I won't put all this back out. I'll just leave it like this, so there's as little weight as possible underneath. So yeah, I'm pretty pleased with that. Made a bit of a mess, probably didn't need to do it, but at least I've got peace of mind. Structurally, I think this should be fine. Before I knock the wall down, I've just braced the joists with a few extra simple noggins just to tie everything together and help spread the sort of load, if it is taking any load, that wall, just sort of spread it out. Spread the pressure between these joists. Okay, I'm about to knock out this wall over here. It's a bit of a funny angle. I'm squaring off a little box room into this bedroom, and I'm going to just video the process. So I've written on the wall the key steps I think you should take to knock down your wall. So first of all, protection from dust. So I've put carpet protectors on the hall, landing, stairs. I've put door seals on the two doors that are going to be affected, and I'm making sure everything's removed from all the local rooms. Protecting the floor, so I will be putting sheets of wood and lots of blankets on the floor to protect it. Supporting extra noggins, so key thing is working out, is this wall supporting anything? If it is, checking the loft. So I've ripped the floorboards up there. I've put some extra noggins in between the joists where I'm knocking the wall out to make sure it's all safe and solid. And I'll be checking on it as I'm knocking the wall out, checking up there that nothing's happening. This wall does not extend up through into the loft, so I know it's not supporting the external wall or the roof. Protect the floor, extra noggins, clear everything. So obviously make sure there's nothing in these rooms. Dust will get everywhere, so make sure everything's nice and clean. Check for utilities. So I remember moving a socket. I put a socket in down here somewhere. I spurred off. So I know it doesn't carry on further, but I'm going to make sure I turn off all the electrics and things. Make sure all that's clear before I start knocking the wall out. Make sure it's all off, and then make sure I'm aware of it. But I will use a stud detector or the voltage detector and check for any pipes, any cables elsewhere in the wall. So yeah, check for utilities. Waste removal. So I assumed I could just get a skip, throw all this in the skip. It turns out you can't put plaster, chippings and waste straight in. You have to get an extra bag. Can't put the carpet in the skip for some reason. So I've checked with a local recycling tip. If it's bagged up in, I think it's 50 litre, is it, bags? So I've bought lots of bags for rubble, and I'll just gradually keep taking it. I think you can take 2 at a time, 4 per month, something like that. So I'll just take all the rubble and the carpets to the local tip. So think about how you're going to get rid of all this waste. There will be a lot of waste. Turn off the electrics when you're actually doing a demo at any time you knock a wall out, just in case you've missed something. Mark the openings. But the key thing is work out where your opening is, make sure it's all level. Use a spirit level for these sorts of things. My house is 1930s, nothing straight in here, so make sure you use a spirit level. It might not perfectly match the angle of the wall, but it will be level and straight. PPE, critical for this, no messing about. The dust can contain silica. I've got a cinder block wall, horrible stuff to breathe, so I'm going to wear a proper respirator mask, eye protection, ear defenders when I'm using the angle grinder or the SDS, and steel toe cap boots, because you drop your sledgehammer or you drop your brick on your foot, you've broken a toe. End of game. Open all your windows, make sure you've got good ventilation in all the rooms. Check everything's sealed in. So although I've got external door protectors with zips on, but masking taped on the outside of the door frame, I will then close the door and duct tape, or probably masking tape, all around. I'm also going to masking tape all the seals on the remaining wardrobes I'm leaving in here. I will be moving the mattresses and bed frames out because, like I say, dust will go everywhere. I'm also sacrificing the carpet and the underlay in here, so the room's going to be a new shape, so I'm getting a new carpet. I'll do the own underlay, I'll do a video for that. But then I can just roll all the dust and crap up, throw the whole thing out the window, take it to the tip. PPE. Drill through, mark the lines. I've explained that. I'll probably make another video. Remove the plaster. So you don't want to just start hacking at this. You want to see where the blocks are. Mine, I've drilled a little test hole. Chipped away is cinder block. So it's made from like old ash. It's basically a concrete block. It's about, I don't know, 70mm to 100mm wide. But I'm going to chip all the plaster off on both sides, nice and neat at the edges, so I can see where the blocks are, so I can cold chisel and take them down more methodically than just whacking at it with a sledgehammer or anything like that. So remove the plaster. I'm also going to remove the skirting boards and the coving. I'm going to buy replacements, but you never know, you might just need a little offcut. You might want to take it, this is an old house, take it so you can offer it up. Make sure you get the same skirting boards. Diamond, then if you can do it without a circular saw or a still saw or angle grinder, you'll make a hell of a lot less dust. Well, hammer and chisel, yeah. And then when I'm taking the wall down, I'll start in the middle at the top, and I'll be quite careful. All the plaster will have gone, the coving will have gone. I've already exposed upstairs in the loft. I can see the wall doesn't go through the plasterboard, it's just the ceiling stops. But I'll start at the top in the middle and just work my way down methodically. I will have, like I say, timber and lots of blankets on the floor, so if I do drop anything, it's not going straight through to the lounge. And then I'll bag all the waste up. So for insulation in the wall, you could buy proper acoustic, I think called acoustic bats or acoustic sort of insulation board. But I've got some old Kingspan that's just been knocking about that I want to get rid of. So I'm just going to line the wall with that. I'm going to use a 70mm studwork frame. That's 50mm thick. So I should be able to just run my cables in that 20mm void without a risk of it sort of overheating or anything. But we'll see as I build the wall. I'll talk you through it. And then in terms of collating fixings and stuff, just looking, I've got tons of bits and bobs, but you could use these sorts of wall fixings, like 100mm long frame fixings to fix your stud work. I'm actually going to go for sort of the ones you just drill straight into the wall with concrete or with brick. I think you have a pilot hole of about 6mm. It's got a Torx setting, and that'll just hold it nice and tight into the wall. And then again, I've got some old, fairly long sort of 45mm drywall screws, but I've just bought some more 38mm drywall screws. I'll probably put them in at like 300 centers, something like that. So just make sure you got enough of everything, and then lots of just make sure you got lots of various screws and things just to hold the framework together. Okay, so I'm just collecting together all my materials for the stud wall build. Firstly, like timber, so I've got lots of bits of timber, so I've been searching around finding bits of timber I can take hangers off cuts of bits of timber and stuff. I'm looking at building the wall in sort of 70 by 50, so 3x2. I've got some plain squared edge timber, I've got some carcassing timber knocking about, but I've just been to the yard to buy my main sort of 2.4 meter tall upright studs. I was going to buy CLS, which is Canadian lumber standard. I think it's perfectly suitable for and good timber for stud work. Then I was considering getting plain square edged, but actually carcassing timber 3x2 is perfectly good. It's got the ease rounded corners, so it'd be nice to grip. Okay, so I've just been to get some materials. This is the plasterboard I'm using. I'm using 15mm thick acoustic soundboard on one wall, and then on the other, just standard plasterboard. I've gone for the 12.5mm standard plasterboard. You can get a bit thinner, but that'll all help with a bit of sound deadening. So that's 2.4 by 1.2. So we've protected the floor with sticky back film, and now I'm just putting door protectors on the 2 rooms where I'm going to cut through the wall, because it will make a huge amount of dust. These door protectors should be enough to stop it, but I'll also, once I'm in, get someone to zip it up, close the door, and I'll masking tape around the inside of the door. So once I'm in, and I'll make sure the window's open. I'll be wearing a proper mask and PPE before I start sawing and cutting out the wall. Put some wood down before you put your blankets down, just to catch any bricks, stop them hitting the floor. Now the wallpaper's going to come off anyway, but we're just cutting the wallpaper so it comes off in one nice piece. We've used a multi-tool just to cut the coving, so it's relatively neat where we're going to break off. And yeah, the SDS is doing a great job, just going to peck away and take the wall down. Okay, so in the end, I'm using my SDS drill. I don't want to go at it with an angle grinder, it creates too much dust. SDS still makes more dust than a cold chisel and a hammer, but I can't be bothered to do it with a cold chisel and a hammer. So I've broken a bit away here, and I can see it's a red brick wall there, it's beautiful. So once I've taken all this off, I'll be able to build off that one. On this side, not so good. It's all this cinder block rubbish, but it comes out very easily. So what I'm going to do is, starting at the top now, I'm going to break out all along where the ceiling is. Currently I've gone through and you can see the back side of the coving. So I'm going to go through, detach it all along the top, and then work down in sections, breaking off the edges, and then knocking out a section at a time. I'm not going to just break down all the sides and then just try and drop the whole wall, because it might drop through into a lounge. So take your time, do it steady. Everything's sealed off, door seal on the outside and the inside. Lunchtime, most of the wall's down. Just had a quick tidy up. It's looking good, so there we go. Very pleased. I've used my SDS breaker to break down to where the electrics are here. Now I've turned all the electrics off, so I'm just going to break these out by hand. I always take a photo of all the wiring before I start dismantling it all, just so I remember what went where. Okay, so the wall is down. I've ripped up all the carpet now and all the underlay. I've had a good sweep. I'm just going to do another sweep, and then I'm going to hoover, make it nice and clean. Before you start building your stud wall, you want to make sure everything's nice and clean and tidy. Start fresh. Make sure you know exactly what you're building on. There we go. And to get the carpet up, I use a carpet knife just to slice through it. Be very careful, very, very sharp. But yeah. So the new studwork wall will come up against this. We'll be fixing on through this into a red brick wall, so that's good and solid. That'll be fine. I'm going to tie in, my new plaster is going to come in, where can I show you? My new plasterboard's going to come in basically and abut this one. So my studwork wall will be parallel, or yeah, sort of in line with this red brick wall. It's going to come out that way. And then the new wall here will be fixed on this side. My studwork will come out this way. So I've just been chipping away, making this all neat. So my 12mm plasterboard will sit in line, flush with this face here. Yeah. Okay, so the studwork sort of what was in here had a timber across the bottom. That's all gone now. We've used a multi-tool just to neaten off the edges. We'll smarten it up again a bit. But the key thing is your electrics. So these are some main bit of my ring main. Obviously I've turned all the electrics off now. So I'm now going to connect and just put a junction box on the end, connecting up the black and the black, the red and the red, and earth to the earth, and then wrap it in lots of tape and tell my kids not to go near it, because I'm going to obviously turn the electrics back on whilst I'm still building the stud wall, but I've got to make sure there's no live cables. And then I can, yeah, turn the electrics back on. Just in terms of sending cables under the floor, I should have filmed me doing it, but my cables were popping up here. I wanted them here. I just use a bit of wire. You just create like a little loop in the wire, poke it through the hole, and then when you feed your cables through, you basically feel them and you can hook them and pull them up through the hole. And it makes it a lot easier than just trying to hunt around, so little hack. So now I've just drilled some little holes to tell me where I am in the loft basically, and each side of the loft joists I just drilled a little hole so I can now on the ceiling downstairs work out where all the joists are. I want to make sure I fix into. You'd assume they're all equally spaced, but an old 1930s house, they're not equally spaced, so that should help. Okay, I've put a few extra noggins in to support the wall that was going between the joists, and then I've drilled little holes to mark where the joists are for the other wall, so I make sure I fix directly into the joist, not just into the ceiling plaster. In terms of all these little marks, basically up in the loft I've been finding out where the joists are, drilling a little hole on either side of the joist, so I know if I go between those two holes, I will definitely hit a timber when I'm fixing my new wall. And then I've installed new noggins there and there between the joists, so I know that when I'm fixing this wall, I can hit good solid timbers there. So I've just used my SDS just to chase out along a mortar groove where I want I'm extending the ring main, so I've got two cables coming in. Two cables coming through here, and then I've just got a pattress. Putting a little grommet, little rubber protector on the top corner, and I'll position that there. That means the socket's more than 450mm above where the carpet will be in terms of building regs. Just going to use my spirit level, just to mark it, get it nice and level, and then mark around it. And then again, I probably just use my SDS breaker again, cut that out. Okay, not my finest hour, but it's in, it's level. We've got our pattress in there. Chased out so I can get my wires, two wires through there, through the grommet into there. So I'm extending the ring main. I've got my two cables here, part of the ring main, so I'm going to have two sockets on one side of a wall and one socket on that side, on the other bedroom. Okay, so now I'm working out where I'm going to put my header plate, one on the top, on both sides, and my sole plates at the bottom. So one little technique I'm just using is little offcut of the same size, 3x2 timber. I've just fixed exactly where I want it on the top, and then put a string line, and that shows me exactly where the bottom needs to be so that it's level. I moved all my electrics yesterday, so luckily I got them bang on in the right place. So I'll cut a hole in a bit of timber where that is. But nothing in my house is level, so it's a good idea to just check with things like plumb lines where you're at. Okay, so I just used a plumb line from the top. I had a header board, little piece there, dropped a line down to make sure I got the position here, and I just offered up a 2.4 bit, got it pretty much level but also in line with this wall, and then marked the blue line, and I'm now working out making this square basically. So using the big angles, positioning it between the wall and this timber to get that one. I haven't got as much space here, so using a smaller triangle to check that's 90 degrees. And then the big triangle in here, offering it up, making sure these are 90 degrees, which they are now. So now I can mark this one and then cut this one off. This one's going to come the full length. Mark this one here, so this one will abut here. And then on this one, I'm going to have 2 vertical posts on this corner, so that this one, which will only have 1 vertical post here, can fix in to a big chunky post there basically. And then I'll have 1 noggin here, not 1 noggin, 1 stud up the middle here, 1 stud up the middle here. I'll have the 2 side wall plates bolted into the walls with masonry fixings. Then I'm going to put a mid-row noggin, well, around probably about a third up, and then I want some shelves on the walls at this height, so I'll put some more noggins in now, knowing that that's where I can fix solid shelves to. And I've already put extra noggins in the loft where I'm going to fix this wall through the ceiling, and here I've marked where the existing joists go, so I can mark this header plate, I can fix this header plate into the joists. So this will be a solid square little bit of stud walling. Now whilst Jen's just steaming up some wallpaper, I'm just using a piece of the studwork, little block, and a piece of timber that is 12.5mm wide to match plasterboard, just to double check roughly where my stud wall is going to go in relation to this wall. So obviously I'm going to use a spirit level when I do it properly, but just to get a rough idea, make sure I've got enough meat in the wall to do my fixings, just doing it like this. So lining this one up sort of flush with the front face of the wall I'm keeping, and then using this block just to offer it up, and then with a pencil I'm just going to mark in the wall just to get an idea. Then same at the top, I've worked out I've got to knock on a bit of the coding, so I'll just use my multi-tool just to slide through the coding, so I've got it nice and flush around there. Okay, so my 2 side posts are in, using 100mm long concrete fixings. Make sure you use a little brush just to clean out the holes, but they're good and solid. I've got 5 in each or 6 in each post and they're rock solid. So now I'm just doing the vertical ones. So obviously I left a gap at the top. I'm just positioning it in and using a timber just to prop it, and then measuring everything to check it's in the right position. But I'm also just using, I don't know if you can see, a plumb line just hanging down off the end, just to double check everything, because the house is very wonky, just to double check that that is in the right place, and it is. So now I can fix that into the 2 extra noggins that I put where those black lines are. So I'll just screw that in, and then I'll put a vertical, well then I'll put the next roof one on, and then I'll do the vertical post. Okay, the main floor and ceiling and side posts are in. I'm just going to double up the post that's going to be here. It's going to be double, 2 of them there, and then I'll have 1 on the other side that can fix into it. So I've just marked one of these posts. I'm just going to screw these 2 together. I'll do sort of 5 screws going through this way, flip it over, 5 screws going the other way, and then I'll saw the ends off, so they're both exactly the same size, and I'll fit them in here, and then I'll do the same on the other one, just with 1 post going up. So I'll show you that in a second. So now my first post is just in, it's not fixed yet, but just checking. So doing it by my method, bang on level. So we've got our post, that's the main one. Make it nice and snug, so I just had to like tap it in with a rubber mallet. It's good. Now we'll fix that, and I'll fix another one to the other side. Then I can start putting in my studs, and then the noggins, and then we're done. So now I've just screwed that inner frame piece, so that'll allow plasterboard to be fixed on this face. So screwed that one in, just using about 4 or 5. We use 100mm. I like these with the Torx fitting. They bite really well, they drive in really well, and don't tend to cam out, so if you don't strip the head. So always use a clamp, it helps make sure everything stays in place. But yeah, now I'll do the 2 vertical studs in the middle. Putting the studs in. So just a few quick points. Mark where you want your stud to go with your line. So measure and make sure it's bang in the centre. But then continue your line down on the outside a bit, so that when you tap your, I will use a rubber mallet, but when you tap your timber across, you'll be able to then line up the middle with the line you've done on the bottom. And then one other little tip I always do is, if you try and just skew nail this or screw this at an angle, undoubtedly as the head bites into it, it's gonna push, the whole thing's gonna push out of line. So I always just temporarily fix a block of wood. So I'll just screw that in there once I've got it in exactly the right position and all level. And then I can screw down this way, and that'll be, this won't budge then. Then I can unscrew this one and then do a screw that way. Same at the top, I'll just fix this simple block on one side so I can skew nail it in, skew screw it. Okay, the main studs are in now, so now it's the time to put in your noggins. I'm going to run electric cable through the bottom, so I'm going to put PIR insulation in here, so I want to keep the cable separate. So I'm just going to use some offcuts of timber just to put, give me like an inch or so at the bottom. So I'll just have a noggin going across here and across there. I'm going to drill through these posts to track the cable through all these posts, because I'm going to then send it up the inside there, or possibly down the outside, send it up and through to that socket as a spur. So there'll be noggins at the bottom. Then you normally just put on this structure like this, just a noggin in the middle, but I want a shelf on both sides around about here, which is sort of 2/3 up. So I'm going to put noggins for my shelf position at about 2/3, and then an extra noggin at about 1/3. So just to make sure the wall's good and solid and give me lots of fixings for my plasterboard. I'm just putting the noggins in, and I'm doing them at the height I want the shelf. So I'm marking on the wall as well where these are, so that I can install the shelf to match. And I think on the height of this, and it feels so solid, I'm not going to do a second row of noggins lower down. I think it's solid as a rock. So as I explained, yeah, I got my cables coming up here, and I'm creating this little gap. So this will sit the PIR on top, or if you're using acoustic bats, you can sit on top of that and leave this little void. And then I've used a spade bit just to drill holes through. This one goes at an angle, you can't see the hole, but yeah, holes around here. So it'll come through, the cable will come through here. I'm just using a block of wood to set my height as I put my next little timber in. Then there's a hole there. And then here, I've drilled a hole here. This is quite niche to my particular situation, but I chased out just the mortar. I'll trap my cable through there, through a grommet, into my new plug socket. And then I don't like PIR insulation like Kingspan touching the electric cable. So I'm just going to use some plumbing plastic pipe with just simple sort of fixings like this. And I'll just route my cable through a bit of pipe, and then in the timber I put here, I'll drill a hole in the top, send the cable down through that little hole in there, and it will track round. So should be good. I'm just doing the electrics. So like I say, I'm routing the cables down and under the bottom, sliding it through. I'll show a picture in a minute to connect back to here. And I'm going to have a ring, continue my ring main. So I'm going to go up into a double socket, then send the cable from there along and up into another double socket, then down through here as a spur. So that ring main, that socket will then come back down and go off that way. And then I'll have a spur coming off that socket, because you can only have one spur off a socket, off a ring main. So that one cable is this one, which will come along here, up through this tube, up through there, through that chase out. And then I've just been connecting it up now. I know this is old wiring, as in it's the old colours, but I bought this wire and it's nothing wrong with it. It's got very flexible modern PVC casing. It's absolutely fine. So obviously make sure your earth is connected to the earthing point, and you use plastic sheathing or 2 layers of decent sort of yellow and green tape. But yeah, so I'm gonna check it all. Once I've installed it all, I'll fire all the electrics back up again, and then I've got one of those devices you plug in just to check. Okay, so I've just connected everything up. I've checked everything's safe, turned it all back on again, and I'm just using a little tester. I've just been around, and basically, if you get 2 green lights, it means it works, and all the sockets work, so I know everything's connected correctly. So now I can isolate it all on the main circuit breaker, make it all safe, plasterboard, and then leave it safe for the plasterer. So yeah. From a previous project. So I've just taken measurements of all the different little voids. You'd assume they'd just be perfect rectangles and squares. They never are. I want this to go in snug, so I've measured all the angles. And then I've just made myself a little table outside. You don't want to breathe in all the dust from sawing, and just use an old wood saw, an old sort of, doesn't matter if it's blunt, wood saw. Measure it, chop it, and then tap it in. The insulation board, like I say, you could use, we probably should use acoustic insulation. This is just 50mm Kingspan leftover bits I had. And then obviously wear a mask when you're cutting it. Use an old saw, doesn't matter if it's blunt. And then just use a rubber mallet to tap it in. You can see I haven't tapped these in yet, some of them, but make them nice and snug. And I just got to cut out for the electrics and run that through conduit again. I've just got 2 bits of pipe. I'm just going to run those cables through up to those sockets. You probably don't need to, that's just my personal preference. I don't want the cables overheating as we touch insulation. Yeah, it was free insulation, so it's got a few dings and bits in it. This side done, they're all firm and snug. Just have to tap them in with a hammer slightly. In terms of plasterboard, you want to keep it off the floor, sort of 10mm, 20mm, to stop any rising moisture. So I'm just going to make a quick little tool just that I can stand on, put it under the board and help lift it. So this is 50mm by 70mm bit of timber. I'm going to cut it off so it's 250 long, and then just cut it into a triangle, and then I'll be able to stand on one side and it'll just lift the plasterboard. So there we go, there's our little tool we're going to use to lift the plasterboard. So on with plasterboarding, 12.5mm plasterboard. I've got acoustic plasterboard on the other side, which I've done, and this is just normal plasterboard. Fixing into the studs, my noggins, about every 200 to 300 centres, with 38mm drywall screws, using my little foot lifter just to make sure I've got that gap at the bottom to stop moisture rising up, just like 10 to 15mm gap. There we go, there's that one, that wall, also ready for the skim of plaster and some backing plaster to fill in some voids. So there we go, we've got acoustic plasterboard on this side, 12.5mm thick, left a little gap at the bottom. Yeah, I think actually I need to install the pattresses. I've put all the electrics in, tested it all, but I do need to put them on before the plasterer comes tomorrow. Okay, so now I'm just putting in the drywall pattresses. So I've already checked all the electrics work, tested it, now I've just killed all the power, and I'm putting these in. So these are Spark Pack plastic ones now. Then I wouldn't recommend these. I'd rather get some screw fix ones that actually undo and sort of fold inwards. These are very stiff to get out. In fact, I just had to go to the builder's merchant to double check. You push your weight on the outside tab and the inside screw, push down, and it'll unclip. So that's now loose. And you can take that out and then fix your drywall pattress in. Make sure it's nice and snug, because these tabs are basically be gripping to the plasterboard. And you can punch the middle hole out if you need to. I'm just coming through the holes in the bottom. Mattresses are in. I'll put junction boxes on the end of these, tape the whole thing up, and then tuck it inside the box so it's nice and neat for the plasterer. Ready for the plasterer. So I'd forgotten to do the ceilings. So the plasterer is coming to do a skim and sort of patch it and fix it all in. So I just found out where the joists were in the ceiling again and just fix some offcuts. So the plaster has done his sort of base coat, filling in all the rough voids. Gonna let that dry a bit, and then tomorrow he'll do his top coat skim of plaster. So all the seams are all taped now. I'm just running a dehumidifier just to suck out a bit of the moisture. So yeah, this side has been plastered today, so we'll leave that sort of 24, 48 hours or so to dry. And then we can do a mist coat. It'll be 40% paint, 60% okay, so the skirting and the coving is now on. That's using universal bonding compound. Just propped it. There's no pins or anything. I think that should be okay. It's by myself, so I've just got some 2.4 metre long timber slats just to help support it. And I've just scratched the wall up to give it a bit more adhesion on there. If it was fresh plaster, you'd probably want to put some PVA just to sort of seal the surface, but we've already painted it, so we're just going to attach to that. And then I'm going to use my mixing paddle. Got a nice clean bowl. It's about 25 kilograms with about 14 litres of water, so I'm just going to use a lot less than that, use the ratio to work out. Mix it in there. Get it done. The mix consistency I've gone for, sort of fairly stiff but spreadable. First one's up and propped, and now next one's cut, ready to install. So here we go, the wall has been rebuilt, and this room feels a lot bigger now. So there's the line of the old wall, here's the new studwork wall, and yeah, the little box room feels much more like a room.